Every time I'm like, you know what? I haven't watched all of TOS. I should give it more of a shot. And then I'm like,
You've seen the best ones. Yeah.
I have actually, yeah.
I don't even know what to say, man. It's like
The flaws are obvious if you've like been paying any attention to gender equality for the last 80 years.
well, that's the difficult part. Like, do we judge the episode like at the time where it aired? It was really not that egregious, and it actually fit in with a lot of the social expectations of gender roles at the time. So it's like, do we get do we have like the moral high ground of having 60, 70 years of hindsight to judge these people, or should we kind of like try to take it more at face value? It's hard to
You can't
decide.
though, because Star Trek isn't a period piece. Star Trek and sci-fi in general is supposed to push boundaries and strive to be more. And Roddenberry just you fell victim to his own
Okay.
Horniness.
tendencies. Yeah, yeah.
Oh, we were
Yeah,
talking
no,
about the
Dan's
episode.
right actually, because like when you have a series where like you point at the instances of Kirk saying like, oh, a woman, no, a crewman, and it's like that kind of gender equality and having Uhura on the bridge, but like Uhura has no input on any of the stuff that goes on in this episode, even though we know from other episodes of TOS, not
I don't
even
think-
Strange New Worlds.
I don't think she wants input on this episode.
Well, yeah,
like
but-
she's
Well, yeah, but it's like if Spock has the monopoly on fucking judging all the horny men for their like tastes, it's like Uhura should easily just be like, "You guys are fucking basic," because they are. But it's
Anyway.
like, yeah, no, I don't know.
Welcome to Star Trek
Hello.
Trek, a continuing journey through the episodes of Star Trek, and we've already started on a problematic bent with mud swimming. One of the early episodes of Star Trek, the original season's first seasons. Would you like to know who this episode was predictably written by? Point for the first person that gets it. No? Really?
rhyme with Goddenberry.
Little bit. Yes, it was indeed written by Gene Roddenberry himself. The teleplay,
We wanted
which
to give
is...
you your moment, Idol. We wanted to give you your moment.
Okay, thank you. The teleplay, mate. The teleplay was by
Is that
Steve.
your Irish accent?
Yes, yeah, that's my Australian. Harry Mudd's Irish. Teleplay by Stephen Candle, who also wrote I Mud, Mud's Passion, so from
my
TS, and The Jihad for some reason. And this was directed by Harvey Hart, and this is the only episode of Star Trek he ever directed. Otto, you look like you're on the edge of saying something
right,
to
so-
start us off.
Yeah, let me start on a good note because we may not have too many of these. Harvey Hart had one thing in Star Trek, and this was it, and it's because he tried to push boundaries. So allow me to quote Memory Alpha, which is apparently the only thing we ever draw from when prepping for these episodes.
It's a good source.
Bob Justman, who we all know, recalled to Jerry Finneman, said, quote, "We're all in outer space, Jerry, and we're in color. NBC claims to be the first full-color network, so let's prove it for them. When you light the sets, throw wild colors in magenta, red, green, any order you can find, especially behind the actors when they're in a close shot. Be dramatic. In fact, go overboard. Backlight the women and make them more beautiful. Take some chances. Nobody can tell you that's not the way the future will look. How can they? They ain't been there yet." So it's like...
Based.
We talked about this a little bit beforehand. TOS just it feels a little bit different than the other series. Even being episodic, it's not quite as formulaic, and especially early on, like you can tell they actually are open to taking chances and stuff. I guess Mr. Hart just pushed it a little bit too much budgetarily, and they're like, no, we can't allow that. So
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, and I guess he's right actually. Like TOS has a unique color palette and a unique visual identity as a result of stuff like that, and it has to be pointed out, even if we do mock it for various parts of that.
I mean, the amount of budget they spent on Vaseline for this film just to smear it on the lens is pretty impressive. There were like equally a number
among
of
other uses.
okay, we had enough of that in the watch along. This is a sophisticated review that everyone listens to.
Oh my God.
Let's
Okay.
we're gonna be touching on some problematic issues. Like we thought Unexpected was like low key problematic. This is all over it. But fun fact: this was one of the original outlines from 1964 that Gene Roddenberry wrote up. I think there were about 12 outlines. Been through them before somewhere. I think we spoke about them during the Cage.
Was it,
One-
the Cage, Charlie X, and Where No One Has Gone Before, I think?
Yeah, and a few others that are
Maybe.
familiar. Some even you saw in the Next Generation they carried over. So this was a candidate for a pilot. Was overruled for the Cage. Was then again for the second pilot was overruled for Where No Man Has Gone Before. But the original tagline for this episode in the 1964 draft was duplicating a page from the Old West, hanky panky aboard with a cargo of women destined for a far off colony. Do we want to talk about like how you could just kind of see the filter of like the more you know, like if I implore anyone who has just come to Star Trek for the first time, just enjoy it without reading up on who Gene Roddenberry, well, his tendencies are like. Yes, he is the godfather of everything we create. His utopian ideals are something to be admired. Some other things are not so much.
All right, let me go big picture for a second, because we did Unexpected recently. I'm sure you can find that on our YouTube channel. And to me, that episode was unexpected because it's like I was alive when that first aired, and I watched it live, and I've enjoyed it for years. And so it's like it being closer to where we are now throws you a little bit for a loop. It's like, were we ever that young? But 70 years ago that stupid shit like this made television. And so you're kind of detached enough from it that you're like, yeah, it's really dumb. I know they had certain ideas back then. So I think that's like the delineating factors is like, if you were there at the time, or some of your ideals may have aligned with that, you're kind of caught aback when you view it as an adult, whereas this is far enough
I mean, this is
away from us that you kind of expect it.
1967 is like the era of the nuclear family. Like this is like the woman, the wife does her job, and like the man earns enough money, unlike today's climate when you can live off like 6 pence a year, and the main breadwinner can do his thing, and the wife is relegated to the kitchen, as it were, in those old-fashioned standards. But we are viewing everything through a modern lens, and nowadays that comes through like the scene. Jumping ahead, like my favorite possible scene was probably like really near the end when Childress and the woman, Miss McHannon, or I forget her name now. Yeah,
Eve.
Yeah, Eve
Miss
were
McGreb.
bickering. They were bickering like an old married couple in their cave of Flintstones-esque proportions, and that was kind of like, okay, this is the most realistic part of this episode. They've actually probably will bond over this mutual hatred of each other because of their unfair standards. That was kind of a
Just
cool
like
how
all
you
the
and Lisa go
successful
together.
boomer marriages where you have to hate each other
Exactly.
to endure.
Yeah, that was possibly the one redeeming part of this. Otherwise, Which
is funny that you point that out, because there's no mains in that scene. It was all the supporting cast.
yeah.
So that says a lot for maybe the the main character's performances here. But yeah, that was a honeymooners moment, sure, and that's that's kind of familiar. We started off talking about Ozzie and Harriet and Donna Reed show and all the nuclear family sitcoms, but this one I think leaned a little more heavily on the sour marriage trope. I do have a little bit of trouble, but I don't want to steal anybody else's thunder here. So
Your thunder's all there. Go for it.
So starting off, I mean, the pillar of the show is Mud, and so his name's on the show. They'll bring him back later. It's difficult to like him. So he's very clearly a pimp. He's a drug dealer. He culturally appropriates an Irish accent.
And drops it halfway through the episode, by the way.
Yeah.
Which is fitting,
It's not
really.
working. We'll finish it out. But he still manages through all of that to be roguishly likable. He somehow does not get outacted by his own belt.
Or by Shatner.
Yeah.
A minor miracle of that.
And I think it's telling that he owns every scene that he's in. It's one of the reasons why this episode is even watchable, is the supporting cast. With the exception of the blue, I forget their names, the blue lady and I guess the
Magda.
the gold lady.
It's
Yeah,
Eve,
so
Magda,
they don't get. I think
someone.
they each get one line. They don't get much to do, but yeah, they brought in some really strong supporting guests. Ben Childress' actor did a fine job here too. Music was on point. So all the Star Trek original series cylinders were firing here. It's just the subject material that causes the struggle.
Yeah, so I actually wanted to pick up on this point. So you brought up a good point of this is very much of the time. This is 1967, and I feel like when you keep in mind the idea of Star Trek as wagon train to the stars, this is way more wagon train. Not a lot of stars here. Like you give like Strange New Worlds some shit for not having aliens. Were there any aliens in this apart from Spock? Like, this is literally just a Western town plot. This is literally just, there's a Western mining town, they don't have any women, there's no sci-fi element here
I think
apart from
yeah.
the lithium crystals,
Yeah.
which is just a MacGuffin, doesn't actually really matter to the plot, it's just a reason that Kirk can't immediately solve the problem. And the Venus drug, which might as well just be makeup. Like, honestly, it might just be a case of, look, people in the Old West have discovered how to wash their face and primp a little bit. Like, that's the actual, especially given what we find out in the end that, oh, I ate colored gelatin and it wasn't, didn't matter in the end. So it's like,
the beauty was inside you
that's
all
one of my
along.
problems. Yes, yeah, what an incredible moral.
Mm.
And it's just not good science fiction. Honestly, it's like,
Right.
it may be like, antiquated, halfway decent social commentary by the standards of the time, but it's not good science fiction. This doesn't ask me to consider anything outside the realms of my possibility. This doesn't like challenge my conceptions of space or time or humanity. I just look at like a load of kind of antiquated tropes about marriage, and like, here's the thing: I have a pretty healthy relationship with my boyfriend, and it's like, all this like bickering stuff, like I said, oh, that's really relatable. It's like, I don't know,
Okay.
not for me.
I didn't say it was relatable. I think relatable in a 1960s fashion. I'm not going to indict my own marriage here.
Okay.
Although we
Okay,
do...
good. Because I'd be worried for Louisa in that instance.
All right, I had the opportunity to bring up Jane Austen 2 streams in a row, so here we go.
Okay, go for it.
I mean, that is, it is of the period where, I mean, even by the 60s, marrying off to a man who can provide was a thing and even expected in a lot of cases. And then obviously more so as you go back through time. So, we're kind of at this point in the timeline, we're reaching the point where women will start to diverge and provide for themselves and not be under the thumb of men all the time. So this might be one of the more last vestiges of that. And so I don't know how much this you caught before you hit play, but right before we started reviewing this, we're saying, well, do we judge it for having 70 years of hindsight to look back on and say, yeah, this fucking sucks? Or do we look at it as it was at the time and being like, well, they did kind of try to do a little bit of Sunday school, drugs are bad, MK, and those sorts of lessons, like women don't need the men, the beauties inside them kind of thing. And of course it is ham-fisted, A, because of the period, B, because of fucking Gene Roddenberry.
No, you said that right. B through F was all just Gene Roddenberry.
In fact, this is another one, what was it? Angel One. Like, it had, we said, it was killed in the cradle, it had no chance. Once again, Mr. Gene Roddenberry, NBC program manager Jerry Stanley recalled that, quote, one of the problems we had in trying to talk Roddenberry out of some of his sexual fantasies that would come to life in the scripts. Some of the scenes he would describe were totally unacceptable. William Shatner noted, quote, that NBC allowed Mudd's women to be produced at all is still a minor miracle.
I don't know if I'd call it that, Will.
Do you think if this had been the pilot, Star Trek would have been referred to as like, oh yeah, that space sex show. Yeah, we love it.
Well, hold on. So here's
still is that, yeah.
So here's a thought. So I wonder. So you brought up Wagon Train, and I had this thought, 2 stars. That so Roddenberry has stated that that's a show he grew up watching that, and so I wonder if this wasn't an interesting mashup that he thought to do. Hey, I clearly love this genre. I'm making a sci-fi show. Is this edgy to mush the two together and to try something? And maybe this is something that just tried and failed, but maybe he had some sort of design behind it. And clearly he remembered the wrong parts of the Western shows that he watched. Maybe during his adolescent years, there was something that appealed to him a little more than other aspects of it. But
I'm thinking of other times that TOS does this, and like Spectre of the Gun is a way better mashing together of sci-fi and Western tropes than this. This is just very much Western with a sci-fi gloss. It's not.
I feel like this is.
I think you're right, actually.
Yeah. This is kind of like an episode of 2 halves, really, because you've got the one half, which is the whole, like, oh, look at these beautiful women. They're making heads turn throughout the ship. Even McCoy's sitting there sweating at his console, and everyone's being ridiculously seductive. But then you have the second half, which is actually more palatable when you find the struggle, like Eve, being more relatable, because she doesn't want this treatment. She just wants to be useful in a way with or without the drug, and she sort of has this moral quandary about taking the drug at all and to sort of finally bite and go, fine, I will take it if this is the kind of woman you want me to be, if this is the kind of like the cultural expectations you want of your women here, and that was kind of what I kind of wish the whole episode had been like, but it was only, I think they pushed them all sort of sex sells as opposed to the moral quandary far too late in the episode.
Let's not pretend, though, that part 1 is a relic of the era, because you have Enterprise's Bound, you have TNG's The Perfect Mate.
Oh, Berman, he learned well from his master.
Well, it wouldn't shock me if even Strange New Worlds did something akin to that, if, class it up, but where a woman comes on board and all the guys are gaga-tongued. It's a recurring theme. I wouldn't blame that entirely on the era or on Roddenberry, because again, they've done it multiple times across other Trek series. So
I feel like Strange New Worlds kind of has done it twice. It did it with the child murder episode and also with the Serene Squall. It's a bit different, but it is
the
still
child
a case
one was
of,
more.
like,
That was just Pike. That was Pike and his
it's
past.
still
I'm
impaired
not sure I've seen the
judgment.
Serene Squall.
Well, I mean, like the psychologist kind of like throws Spock for a loop and manipulates him about the entire thing.
Yeah, but
kind of. But I don't think that's the thing. I don't think Strange New Worlds would let this trope really slip through unaltered in that way.
I mean, I think you'd be surprised. It may not be as blatant, but I can definitely see a thing where like
Maybe.
the guys are.
I'd be interested to see if they could do it in a bit more of an interesting way.
By the way, a bit of just hilarity, like you don't need to couch anything. George Takei being like, "Oh, that woman is so attractive. Look at how tongue-tied I am." Like, I did have a little bit of a, I had a bit of a laugh at that. Like, well done.
It's like, great acting, George. You really convinced me you're a heterosexual man.
As he's touching up the con officer at the same time, he's like, "Look at that woman. She's so hot."
He needed a little help to get through that scene, yeah.
So to push a couple of quotes to push the awfulness of this episode. NBC did not choose this episode as a second pilot, mostly because they're worried about the central theme of selling women throughout the galaxy and the guest stars being an intergalactic pimp and the 3 space hookers. Direct quotes.
Wow.
But
but
Herb Solo, regarding the script, commented, "It was very well written. It was fun, and it featured 3 beautiful women hookers selling their bodies throughout the galaxy. It later becomes a standout and much-loved episode in the series." Like, what a tone-deaf quote! It's just so terrible. Oh, no wonder Star Trek never had like a female viewership like this. Like early on, like it took a long time.
Yeah, it took pushing Spock to prominence for that to happen.
The thing that I can't escape. And Dan touched on it already, is there's actually a couple redeeming things. Like this set up Harry Mudd, who I love to see every time he's on my screen.
Yeah, he's
it
great.
established his character, and then they follow through on that later on. It gave us a little bit with the scene where he's passing the drugs to the women and Eve resists and finally gives in to temptation. There's a kernel of a good idea there. So I can't, regrettably, I can't pan it as complete trash, because there's actually like some either consequence or some follow through. And then I pull back, I call back to Star's Angel One thing, where it's like, it's so, like if this episode didn't exist, would that change anything about Trek history? No. Yeah. And I'm almost there with this one, but I just can't quite get there, because
Mudd,
I think Mudd is like what redeems it.
Yeah.
Well,
Mudd has a better
episode
episode
like,
later on. Like he has Iron
yeah,
which
he does.
Yeah.
Mudd's great. But yeah, no, you're not wrong. Or there are pieces here that, like, because if you think about it, you had Where No One's Gone Before, The Cage, which obviously didn't air, Charlie X, and then this. If you think about this episode in opposition to those other ones, it does actually set up Kirk's characterization as someone who will resist a beautiful woman for the good of his ship. It does set up like Spock's like rigorous emotion and like absolute refusal to give in to manly whims. You get a bit of Scotty's staunch professionalism, although it is impaired. There are bits and pieces of characterization here for the principal players, but it's just a little bit more scattered, and they will bring these pieces out and they will be given a bit greater spotlight later, but they are here.
Okay, let's have a chat about what other Trek. If you could imagine this episode being transposed into another Trek series, and let's ignore Enterprise because we already had Bound, which is kind of the same episode. And I'm kind of thinking TNG kind of almost had it with the Kamala episode, the Perfect Mate.
Yeah.
It's a little bit similar to that. So
which. Dude, I want to say TNG just so we can get the Patrick Stewart scenes at the end with him and Bev and Kamala again, because I want to see it just redone again. That's
Yeah, but what other series do you think could have approached this episode in that way?
I think
I'm gonna try.
early
Go
Deep
ahead, Dan.
Space Nine. So Bashir could be a moron around different women. So
Yeah,
Nog
that
and
tracks,
and
that
Jake
tracks.
can dangle their feet on the boardwalk and ogle at them as they're walking through. It'd be fun to watch.
Yeah, they're probably not gonna work with that. If it was done in a more intelligent and self-aware and mature way, I could see Discovery doing this plot a little bit. I could, a little bit.
Who's
but
being
just,
who's
having
being
more fun
swayed
with
here?
it.
Who's the eye? Who's sitting at the con and their eyes are turning around, going, "Oh, hello."
Would that be like Reese and Bryce and
Yeah.
maybe Tyler if you're like season 1? I could see that.
Believe it or not, I'm going to go Lower Decks because I think, all right, who is
Yeah,
who
Good
is
shout.
yeah.
Good
who would
shout.
be a strong female character who could snap the men back from the edge? And I think Mariner. And I think
And
if you
Freeman
have
as well.
if you have Boimler and Rutherford starstruck by women and their tongues lolling out, and then you have a storyline where Mariner and Tendi team up to try to snap
Yeah,
him back to reality. I think that has hijinks written all over it. That
They
could
actually
work.
kind of did a bit of it with that one where Mariner thinks that Boimler's about to be eaten by an alien.
Oh,
and
yeah,
she's like constantly trying to scan. Yeah. You can have like a bit of that plot there, but she's just wrong. It's just kind of that same plot, but I can see it. Lower Decks could
What
work.
about you, Idle?
I'm trying to think how it would apply, because you've already named sort of the two I probably would, but I'm trying to think how it would apply to Voyager. And I kind of think maybe it's a Tom Paris, Ensign Kim situation, and that somehow involves the Delaney sisters.
Well, also
Yeah,
the
probably.
supporting cast would be more interesting than the main cast on any episode of Voyager too. So
Oh, shots fired!
Oh,
200
love Voyager in this house.
20 people
Come
have just
on.
turned the stream off. I am being
We
optimistic.
only have 5.
Shut up. I'm
That's
pumping
because
that
the
up.
rest turned it off. We had 200 until Dan said that.
yeah, I'm just your trick time heel.
Do you know what?
Boo this man.
I'm
boo.
subbed. I don't name namer. Sorry.
I was gonna indict this episode into one of our new category I want to induct, which also you came up with a good name here, which is called the Great Turd of the Galaxy. I don't think I can quite put this in the Great Turd of the Galaxy, Fred.
It's pretty
but
damn close.
it's not bad. It's not bad. But let's go for best and worst moments. Dan, please start us off. Best and worst moments.
I love Farrell. Lieutenant Farrell in this episode just stole the show every time he goes on the bridge. So I think every moment where him acting very Steve Buscemi, clearly off his lithium, just freaking out and trying to fly the Enterprise by the seat of his pants with his veins popping out. Worst moment, probably not at the time. I'm sure circular playing cards were futuristic, but now I think they sell them to
really want some.
old folks' homes because they can't hold the
Hold on.
cards. So-
Hold on. Out of everything in this episode, you're picking circular playing cards as the worst.
Well, yeah. Again, checking my privilege. I don't want to. I don't want to cast any stones here.
Oh
so
my
I'm
God.
going with the safe options.
I really want some.
If
Trick
it
to
weren't for
heel
those
out.
fucking playing cards, this would be a 10 out of 10 episode.
All right. Also, bear in mind you now can't pick the circular playing cards. Please,
He's just
your
mad 'cause
best
I
and
took
worst.
his one. Yeah.
I can't get over that. Like, that's the worst part of this episode by far. Let's see. Stars you go. I gotta think about
Yeah,
it.
okay,
for a
sounds
second.
Oh god, thanks. All right, my favorite moment would probably have to be just Spock throughout the entire thing because
Sounds
he's
pretty
the
good.
only man not thinking with his dick. Like Kirk tries, but he loses it halfway through. Leonard Nimoy is already just a consummate professional. He's already a joy to watch anytime he's on screen. Consummate professional, he's just fun to watch. Every time you see a little acting choice, every time you see he pulls off smugness so well.
He really.
There's
The
a
entire
reason.
episode is just
So subjects. In terms of worst moment,
Circular playing card. Get the fuck out of here, Dan.
Oh god, what would it be? There's so much to pick from.
I mean, yeah, you're not.
It's like death by 1,000 cuts.
No one's picking the low-hanging fruit here, really, are they?
I can't pick. I can't choose a specific thing because like everything is just like a little bit of a. That's annoying. That's annoying. That's annoying. That's annoying. That's really lame. That's lame. It's just like a death by 1,000 cuts. You know what? Fuck it. I'm just gonna undercut you all. I'm just gonna say the episode's treatment of women is my least
There we go.
favorite.
There we go.
There you go.
Auto.
All right.
Lack of
I'll have
square
a
playing
co-best.
cards.
No, I'll have a co-best. Although I will rank them 1A and 1B. 1B would be Shatner because, like you said, it does set things up. Yeah, we all joke about his romances and what a woman's man he is, but he is married to the Enterprise at the end of the day, and that makes him a formidable ship's captain in universe, which I do love. And they establish that he's not just a horn dog. But more importantly, 1A is Eve, because how easily could they have just had the women go along with this and then have a man come in and save the day? In fact, they probably wanted to on the first draft of this. So the fact that she was fighting back and resisting and standing up for herself the whole time is important, because that is at the end of the day like the point of the episode, and they could have easily given it to a man. So I'm glad that they gave Eve that much in the episode. My worst moment actually is then when she cooks for the guy that looks like a foot. What's his name?
Childress.
Childress. Oh, you look so ugly, even though I look like the bottom side of a shoe. Yeah, all right, bro, whatever. The fact that they went with the whole tired trope of, oh, I guess, now I have to slowly warm up to you and we'll get along just fine, even though, he rides her and he chides her. And it's like, that is such a tired 60s trope. It's like, come on, I don't want to see another, like, verbally abusive relationship out of the 60s. Give me two people who mutually respect each other. And so just them going down that path.
I feel like that was
all right,
kind of what they were
don't want
building up to in the episode. I reckon by the end of the episode they'd be like, "Oh right, okay, let's have a fair shot at this." Like that would have been nice to have a little coda. Like 10 years later, they're like madly in love and they're just like jokingly
Well, right,
"Oh, you're
but,
so
like,
ugly. Go fuck
Well,
yourself,
you
right? Have a
base it
nice
on
day,
like
honey."
mutual respect instead of mutual irritation.
Yeah,
you know
yeah.
what I mean?
Yeah.
But that's a hindsight thing, because the 60s TV can't grasp that quite.
Okay. Best moment. I don't know. I quite liked Eve's storyline in. Yeah, I love the circular playing cards. They're fucking awesome. I want some. No, I liked.
You're gonna fight Dan for their honor.
Well done. You just
That's
made.
the worst.
You just made the next best of clip. When I can be bothered to make them. No, I liked Eve's overall kind of storyline. I feel like she was the most sort of. I feel she was the main character of the three women. Essentially, she was the one that was given the plot development, but sort of her kind of rejecting like the drug and struggling with the whole situation in a kind of almost trafficking way that kind of is a little bit disturbing, but they kind of normalize it here, which isn't good in the long run, but. They did the best with what they could with what morality they had in 1967. I feel like that was probably the best you're going to get.
What morality they had.
Yes. My best moment. I kind of want to say. Yeah, I mean, Mud was cool. I find I'm a less of a Mud fan. I find him a very much too caricature-ish. Very much like, I'm this Irish renegade rogue that's just a little bit shifty and sneaky, I feel like when we get to iMud, that's a better version of that character. Best moment, I'm gonna also steal Spock for this. I just feel like every one of his shitty looking smug looks every time you see him in this episode is just it's just entertaining. Like it's the least Spock has been in the entirety of the original series, because he's basically grinning throughout the entire episode, going, "Oh, these basic humans, what do they know?"
You basic bitch is not a Vulcanian like me.
Vulcanian.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Overtired says, I haven't seen this episode in forever, so I can't speak to it in particular, but Mudd is the rare human character that falls short of the optimistic Roddenberry future. He's a human completely outside of Starfleet, which we don't get a ton of, and that's actually a cool point, actually. I feel like, we don't see a lot of the... Because, like, Gene Roddenberry's whole thing is the utopia, humanity has gone beyond such needs as greed and, want and things like that, but then you get someone like Mudd comes in and goes, "Oh, hey, I'm going to sell these women."
That's exactly what he said.
That's what it sounded like.
In his defense, I'm pretty sure he dropped the accent around the time that they discovered he's not actually whatever his name
I feel
was.
like that was more of an intentional.
So,
yeah.
I wouldn't say it's just the actor being lazy.
The rogue with the brogue.
Hey, love it. All right, stars. What is our criteria for this episode?
You all tried to fucking preempt me, and it's like... So I was originally gonna go with bullshit detecting computers out of 10.
That was actually a good moment. That actually, I corrected that moment with the computer just going incorrect. That's actually my best moment.
Yeah. But I think we have to go with what the actual theme of the episode is, which is incels in space out of 10, gentlemen.
Wow. Okay. Stars, lead us off.
Shouldn't that be like an inverted rating? The more incels, the worse it is.
Don't
Yeah.
think about it
Yeah,
too
golf
deep.
scores.
yeah.
Stars, how many incels in space are you
Wait.
giving this? How many angry
Wait.
4chaners out of 10?
Hold on, it's got to be in space.
In space. All right. This might shock you. I'm actually gonna give this 6 incels in space out of space out of 10.
This guy fucking loves prostitution.
Well, if it's male prostitution, then yeah, sure. So here's the thing, right? Is that we've spent the last like 20-30 minutes just raking over the coals and laughing at all the inadequacies of the script and how tired and shitty it was. But the thing, and guess what? This is colored by the fact that I am watching it with my best friends, and you, Idol. Guess what? I wouldn't make that joke if I didn't love you. I was not having a bad time. Like, yes, I was rolling my eyes every now and then, but I was entertained. Yes, the constantly horny jokes are kind of funny. The acting is on point. It is actually visually interesting to watch. There is a point to the episode, even if it is very labored and like kind of muddy and Sunday school, as you've said. And when I think of like, does this hurt Star Trek as a series? No. Does this make Star Trek as a series better? As I mentioned, having the proto bits of like Spock and Kirk's characterization and Mudd being like basically kind of an anomaly among non-Starfleet humans. Yeah, it kind of helps broaden out the world. Like, I don't know, it's not a bad. I don't think it's an outright bad. There are so many more that are worse. And if I'm going with 5 as completely mediocre, I have no strong feelings, and then 4 is awful, and then 6 is like it's vaguely okay. It's a 6. It's a 6 in cells in space at a time. In space.
Auto.
You're welcome.
Auto. No, you rate.
All right. So first of all, it is 3.1 incels in space out of 10, and let me explain why.
0.1.
Mostly because
the
we
fuck
just
is the
watched.
point of the 0.1?
Because we
Okay.
just watched Unexpected, which I gave a 3. All right. And after thinking about it over and over and over again, it is slightly better. I can't get away from the fact that which we've already touched on, it does actually add certain things to certain storylines within Trek that they will touch on in the future and build upon. So like that is fine. And then we also talked about, do we look at it with the benefit of hindsight, or do we look at it as like a 60s episode? Normally I give shows the benefit of the doubt, but as I'm watching it, all I could keep thinking was, this fucking sucks. That's all I could, like, that phrase kept popping in my head. And I'm just, I'm kind of tired of the boomer mentality on relationships and marriage and how things should be. And it's like, I also had 5 drinks like before the show, so I don't give a shit anymore. So 3.1, because technically, if you want to talk about the little details, it probably did more for Star Trek. I didn't feel bad watching. I just felt like bored, or like, all right, let's get on to some better episodes. So 3.1, it wasn't good by any stretch, I don't think, but it did add something to the Star Trek universe.
Dan.
Well, I think this episode is a Wagon Train 7 and a Star Trek 3.
That's good delineation.
I think they're reciprocals of each other. So it's not. So we talked a little bit ahead of this about whether it's actually good sci-fi. It's not. Sci-fi is supposed to push boundaries. It's supposed to show us an aspirational view of our future. And this is just too anchored in the past. And even at the time, even in the 60s, the shows on TV were not of their own time. They were period pieces. You've got your Westerns, And then, of course, Star Trek was rare, but people didn't want to sit down in front of the TV and watch reflections of themselves. They wanted to see something different, and this was just too much of a reflection of that era's values to be interesting in any way to me. I will give it an extra 0.5 for having no godlike beings in it. So I'm gonna settle on 3.5.
3.5.
Let me ask you, because you brought up the sci-fi aspect, near the end there, where she takes the Venus drug, suddenly becomes beautiful, but they say, "Oh, it was within you the whole time." Did you have any inkling of like, ooh, like piqued interest, like this is a concept, or were you just like, "Oh, that's lame"?
I think they were just all dying of lithium poisoning.
Yeah, no, the life support failed and they've been huffing fumes for half an hour.
Yeah,
It's all asbestos all the way down. Yeah.
Okay.
I will
Captain
give.
Idol.
I will give this a pure 3. My loathing of decimal places still continues. It's
How
yeah.
am I the most positive on this episode?
Dude, that's what I love about the ratings is when someone surprises me. So
Yeah, if 3/4 of the episode hadn't been these 3 ladies walking around the ship and everyone like the one thing I remember is the guy that's about to go up the Jeffries tube and literally hangs off the ladder for a good like 25 seconds staring at this woman as she walks through the ship. Just moments like that was just like this episode could have been something else. It could have been the moral quandary between like is there truth in beauty? Things like that. Like the whole deceptiveness of the drug to sell to I don't know what kind of point I'm making here, but it could have been better. It could have been less of the Gene Roddenberry and more of the wagon train, I think maybe. But
in my recent rewatch of TNG, I noticed, and I wish I'd jotted some of these down. I noticed a lot of times, seasons 1, 2, 3, where it's like, all right, this episode kind of sucks, but you can tell it's the precursor to an episode that's going to come later that redoes it better. And so, like, this episode sucks, but when we get to the perfect mate, mostly because of Sir Patrick, I'm going to be like, this episode is awesome, even though it has stupid slack-jawed miners in 10 forward who can't get enough of Famke Jensen, so say we all. So it's like sometimes you do have to have these sort of baseline bad episodes in order to make great ones stand out later, I think.
Thank you, Buda. Apparently I'm in the wrong Twitch category. There we go. But yeah, I feel like, right, this brings us to an average of 3.9 stars. You're pushing up that average for all of us.
I think 3.9 is about average. I think that's about right.
Yeah, a 3.9. I really need to get my spreadsheet sorted because it's getting very complicated to read now. But Star Trek is now a 6.0. We've dropped it down from what it was previously.
When we get out of season 1 for most things.
Good lord.
Considering going through season 1, that is way stronger than
we
it
had
has
a lot
any
of
right
season
to
1
be.
stuff. We'll get those out. We got like 900 episodes to go through. Surely it'll
We
go
got
up.
a lot of goddamn work.
All we know is Star Trek will never be a 10 out of 10. It will never be a 10 out of 10, but we'll do it again. But if you're on the live stream, stick around. We're going to be watching Lonely Among Us very shortly. If you're listening on a podcast, we will see you later. Live long.
All right, you know what?
prosper.
I'm right here. I'm like that fucking Gordon Ramsay me. Just find us some good fucking food.